All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for participating with us today with our employer panel for our Diversity Plus You in the Workplace. So before we begin, we're going to introduce our panel, and we're going to start with David from UPMC. David?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. And let me first start by saying it's a pleasure to be a part of this very leaderly panel with all of you today. I also want to thank the University of Pittsburgh for their invitation and their leadership in hosting this very important conversation. I also want to thank the many individuals who work behind the scenes to help coordinate these events, because there's a lot of details. And so I want to thank the group for all of the efforts made. As Lindsay said, my name is David Bubis, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Senior Director of the UPMC Center for Engagement and Inclusion. UPMC is a healthcare provider located within the Pittsburgh region. However, we stretch much beyond Pittsburgh, as also beyond the state of Pennsylvania. We have over 40 hospitals, 700 doctors' offices, and outpatient centers. We also manage healthcare organizations in 4 different countries. We have an insurance services division with about 4 million members, which makes us the largest insurer in Western Pennsylvania. We also have a commercial arm where we create products to help improve quality and patient care services for other organizations as well. My role within UPMC, and I've been with the organization for over 15 years as the Senior Director within our Office of Diversity, is really to help set and align our diversity outcomes, our strategy and execution to ensure a workplace, a patient care environment, and a community where every single person is valued, where every single person is appreciated, and really working to together as an organization to ensure the best service. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, David. All right, from PNC, we have Chris Brown. Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks for introduction. Sorry to disappoint, not singing and dancing today. As Lindsay said, my name is Chris Brown. I'm the diversity specialist. I'm aligned to the campus recruiting team here at PNC, and I'm sure hopefully you all are familiar because we have a lot of ATMs on your campus, but we are the number 6 largest bank in the country, soon to be number 4 largest bank in the country. And my role specifically revolves around our HBCU and strategic diversity partnership recruitment efforts. And so I lead all of our efforts on HBCU campuses, as well as help manage the 32 to, I think, 35 different strategic partnerships, including NABA, Out for Undergrad, Hispanic Scholarship Fund, all those sort of firms who allow and help us to get diversity into our early career programs. So I work with all of our different internship and development programs, from HR to asset management to tech and innovation. So my day-to-day is super busy, but I always love having conversation with students around the important topics I think we're going to cover today. So that's my intro.
Thank you so much, Chris. All right, so just to introduce myself, I am Lindsay Cross. I am the Employment Development Specialist that works with the Career Center. And I do also have a coworker with me on the panel as well. Devin, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Devin Henley. I'm the Employer Relations Coordinator here at the Career Center. And thank you again for joining us today.
Fantastic. All right, for our next employer, we have from Target, Abubakar Bangora. Go ahead, Abubakar.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. And once again, just thank you guys so much for having us. This is my second part of being a panel. And the first round was fantastic. So I'm glad to be back today. Now, I have been with Target stores for 17 years now. I started as an intern straight out of college. So every time I get an opportunity to come and speak to our campus folks, I really cherish those moments, right? Because I myself started right out of campus as an intern, and 17 years ago out of New York City, and I never left. So it's been a great company to be with and to work for. So I'm the senior director here. I've moved around with the company multiple times now. I think in the 17 years, I've moved 7, maybe 8 times. I've lived in Virginia Beach, North Carolina, Philadelphia, Boston, and I moved from Boston to the Pittsburgh market. So I've only been here for about 2 years now. So senior director for stores. So I oversee all things operations for Target stores, coupled with talent and talent development. So once again, excited to be here today, and I'm looking forward to the great dialogue we're going to be having.
Thank you so much. We're excited to have everybody here on the call as well. So we have two more employers. Next is Eaton. Katha Seymour, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And just like many of the panelists, thank you for putting this together. And we're really grateful for the opportunity for Eaton to be represented here today. So I'm Katha Seymour, as she's mentioned, and I'm the Senior Manager for our Global Inclusion and Diversity efforts at Eaton. Eaton, we're a power management company, and our mission is to improve the quality of the life and the environment through the use of power management technologies and services. So we provide sustainable solutions that help our customers effectively manage electrical, hydraulic, and mechanical power, and really more safety, more efficiently, and more reliably, right? So Eaton's, our revenues were almost 18 billion last year, and we are in actually over 175 countries. I'm actually from Canada originally, earned all 3 of my degrees here in the US, and I onboarded to Eaton in 2016 as part of their Global Leadership Development Program, which is a program for MBA graduates. And so I was one of 6 that came in 2016. I've worked in our vehicle group as a global program manager. Then I went to our lighting division as a product line manager for a $63 million product line. And then the year after that, I graduated from the program in 18 and rolled off into a distribution channel manager. And I was responsible for $262 million of our sales there. And in that role, was able to, of course, work in a lot of different areas of the company. And most recently, I just took this job and I'll be relocating to Cleveland at our corporate headquarters to serve in this senior manager role. So really excited to be here with you guys today.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Next, we have from Enterprise, Jess Morales.
Hi, everyone. And I echo everyone else's sentiments with saying thank you so much for including us on this amazing initiative. I'm really excited to be a part of it. So my name's Jess Morales. Jasenia kind of gets people tied up, so I just shortened to Jess. I have been with Enterprise Holdings for almost 16 years now, and I have also moved around quite a bit. This is actually the 5th market that I've worked in. I'm very new to the Pittsburgh area. I've only been here. I'm hitting my 8-month mark. So great to get to know everyone. But my title is the Group HR Manager for the Pittsburgh market. But in addition to overseeing all of our recruitment and talent development and generalist functions, I actually head our local diversity and inclusion team here, as well as I am an open door, open minds trainer for the Northeast region, which means at our corporate office, we have training for our senior level officers on the topic of diversity and inclusion. So I'm fortunate enough to be a part of that team. For those of you that don't know, Enterprise Holdings is a total transportation provider. So you probably are familiar with the Enterprise brand, but we also have truck and we have car sales. We also oversee the National and Alamo brands. So I'm sure that you have seen us all over the Pittsburgh market. So thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Sarah Oliver Carter from Duquesne Light.
Hi, well, I'm excited to be here and it's wonderful to be welcomed. I was having some technical issues, which is like typical of me. It just simply happens. And so I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, hear some and learn from this esteemed panel. Again, my name is Sarah Oliver Carter. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer for Duquesne Light. So who's Duquesne Light? We're a transmission and distribution company when it comes to electricity. Like, we keep your lights on. So that's what we do. I've been with Duquesne Light for almost 2 years, which is exciting, but I've been in the Pittsburgh area forever. And I also used to work for Penn State. So I worked with students on a regular basis. So it excites me to be having this conversation. So a little bit about my background. I am the Chief Diversity Officer. I used to work for a large healthcare organization. I used to work for Penn State. And my job essentially is to kind of further DE&I, or diversity, equity, inclusion in corporate arenas, so that we can have, really good culture with really good people to do a really good job and align all of that together. So again, thank you. Please excuse my technical issues. It's just who I am. I own it, and that's the way it is every day. So thank you so much.
It's perfectly okay. I feel like we all go through that. And honestly, I'm so glad that you're very open about it. So I'm glad everybody is too. I think we're all comfortable now, right? All right, so great. So Devin's going to ask our first question.
So again, I'm going to kick us off with our first question, and this question is for everybody in the group. What does your company do to make new diverse employees feel welcome?
So, since I had technical issues and I was late, I'll kick that off, right? So there are a couple of things we do. First of all, we just recently at Duquesne Lake, we started what we call BRGs or BERGs, actually, Business Employee Resource Groups. And so when new employees come in, so when we think about diverse, can be very large. So women, people of color, veterans, people with disabilities, people coming from outside of the Pittsburgh area. They're experiencing a different culture. So we offer up that. We also have an onboarding process. It's because we're virtual now, it's one-on-one. It gives people a lot of really good opportunity to have conversation. But we also introduce them to some of the new trainings and opportunities that we have. So we do start something immediately. We start people off with unconscious bias, right? We also point them to places within the organization that if they have questions, they can actually ask. And maybe it's somebody like them, maybe it's somebody that they're familiar with, but we want to start building that level of trust in the organization because, we're talking about, new employees, but one of the other pieces of this is we're in a COVID environment. And so where someone used to be able to walk into the office and kind of meet and talk with people, they don't have that opportunity anymore. So we go out of our way to kind of welcome people and connect even before they start. And I think that's a critical part of the Duquesne Lake culture. So thank you.
I'm happy to share from my perspective and to add to some of Sarah's remarks. I think this question is really important. I think we all can agree and recognize that starting a new position, starting a new job, a career, it can be very stressful. In fact, they say it's one of the top 5 stressors that we all experience. Stressors like getting married, having kids, large financial purchases like buying a home and starting a new job. Those are some of the top stressors. So the importance of setting new employees up for success is extremely valuable to the organization. I think I would start by commenting on our approach at UPMC, which is really through our organizational culture. So there's a series of tactical efforts to help set new employees up for success, and they're very important. But that really starts at the highest level with a commitment to what does it mean to be part of UPMC? And that's our culture. And culture, just like diversity, is very broad. And so for us, what we've done is we've really focused on our culture through the lens of our core values. What are the beliefs, the shared interest that we have as an organization that really unites us, and how we use those values to really inform the behaviors that we want to see? So thinking about our organizational culture, that's been very helpful for us as we've looked at how we onboard new employees. And so thinking about how we, to Sarah's point, welcome individuals prior to even starting, because the onboarding process really starts at recruitment. It really does. Those first impressions start then. And what we've done from a diversity perspective, we've looked at how we can even reach out to folks prior to their start for that welcome, and even having different social events. We do this within the physician space in numerous ways. So folks who are going to start coming to Pittsburgh, coming to Pitt, coming to UPMC, and how we can have an effort where we invite folks, because one of the things that we recognize is you need to have that anchor within the organization itself, but also that anchor within the community. And it takes a team to do that. So there's a series of tactical efforts like that we put into place. But for us, I really think it starts with culture and putting the commitment to who we are as an organization and ensuring that individuals through their onboarding process learn about our values and that they're welcome, they're appreciated, and that we do our part to set everyone up for success.
Now, Devin, I'll follow up on that just from as I'd say this is more from an early career internship development. lens. Oh, man, all these meetings are coming up on my calendar. But specifically, I think for me, a big piece of this is the mentorship aspect. And so for our development programs, literally every single individual who comes on board with us via that route has a program manager, or sometimes two program managers, who are in control of helping shape their experiences once they begin starting with us through those programs. And so as a part of our development program and our internship for that matter, students, alumni are given a mentor. This is a formal mentor. So you can have that one-to-one conversation, dialogue, be able to bounce ideas, learn from their mistakes or opportunities, and really get I'd say, objective perspective on things that, that you're doing in order to start your career, probably avoiding some of those pitfalls. For me, I think that was very important. Just a little bit of background as well. Graduated from Penn State in 2016. Went through our human resource development program and bounced around and had a couple different roles in HR here at PNC. And so my mentor, Lena Chrissy, who's a Pitt alum, so shout out to her, was my formal mentor. And again, she was that sounding board to say, like, hey, does this presentation look right to you? Am I going to approach this from the right angle? Is this going to resonate with the executive leaders that I know you've already talked to, or you've already been through this? And so it was just a great opportunity for me to, one, learn, but again, to hear from someone who's been there before and know that I have that formal person I can meet and connect with that helped shape my experience so early on in my career. So for me, like I said, the mentorship aspect is everything, and great for students as well as at any level coming into a company, important to have.
Yeah, just to kind of tag along as well. David talked about the culture piece, and obviously Chris, highlighted the mentorship, and I'll just kind of share some personal stories here. I think as they come in, that culture is extremely critical. To echo David's point, right? That's kind of how we play here at Target. That's kind of how we represent. That's how we make them feel welcome. I'll tell you, I think from a cultural standpoint, it's like one of the things that I've observed, in my years with the company is our ability to just reach out, right, and connect with them, right? That cannot be understated. The ability to just pick up the phone and reach out. We had a human resource business partner who was recently promoted from a store in New Jersey, and this kid got moved up to Connecticut. So I noticed, we're on a conference call. I noticed he was newer. I'd never seen him on a conference call. I immediately sought him out, find out his contact information, and reached out to him, right? And now he leveraged me as a sounding board. He leveraged me as a mentor, to Chris's point, that mentor-mentee relationship. And I've told him too, like, hey, listen, you could pick up the phone. It doesn't have to be anything formal. We don't have to set up status times or anything. If there's anything that you're going through that you think, man, I wish I had someone that I can reach out to and bounce stuff off of, and please do. Please call me whenever, unless if I'm in Africa on vacation, don't call me then. But and that's the relationship we have now. And I share that this is that's my example, but it's not unique to just me. This is something that most of our leaders here at Target, practice on a regular basis, just picking up the phone, establishing mentor-mentee relationship. Know folks that are coming on board. And I think Sarah touched on it. Folks coming from outside of Pittsburgh, could be walking into a totally different culture, different vibe. And, so I think the things that we do to make them feel welcome is part of that culture that Dave touched on, but also part of that mentorship that Chris highlighted.
I can speak on some things that we do with regards to the DE&I with our new hires. So I agree with everyone and how important the onboarding process is. And just speaking from a personal perspective, I was a minority female walking into the business world. So that was something that was extremely top of mind for me. It was something that I was aware of. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't pigeonholing myself with the company that I decided to build my career with. So taking that personal experience and now being a part of the person that designs our onboarding, we talk about it. So regardless of the position that you are coming into, we give all of our employees training on open minds, open doors. We give them diversity and inclusion training. We educate them on what our initiatives are. So I think that that is really important because they need to know that that is something that we are proud of, something that is top of mind, and something that we openly discuss. So on the very first day, we talk about the things that we're doing, all of the platforms that you could be a part of, what avenues to kind of venture down where your voice can be heard. And something that is, I think, great about our organization is that we only promote from within, which means most of our senior leadership team has walked in your shoes. So that mentorship piece is really important to us. And it works so well because all of those things that are running through your mind that you're kind of afraid to discuss or speak about, many of us have experienced and discuss very openly. So I think in addition to what everyone else has mentioned, I think it's just being extremely transparent with what your organization does and offering that early and frequently in our new employees' careers.
That's excellent feedback, and I think that might be the one to maybe wrap us up here. Gosh, it's been great learnings just for me listening to everybody's responses, and definitely concur with what we've been talking about. And, similar to Jasenia, what you just said about being a minority female with your business, as I mentioned, I was onboarded through our leadership development program, coming from a very different background, right? Eaton manufacturing company, engineering. I'm coming from professional sports and higher ed, right? So, for me, it was important to be with a company where I could bring my whole self to work, right? My diversity of thought, my diversity of sort of perspectives. And what I've really appreciated about Eaton is that we have this aspirational goal to be a model of inclusion and diversity in our industry. And, inclusion plays such a big piece of that because we really welcome and value everybody. And I'm a great example of that because I came into a company that I didn't have that traditional background. Like I almost like to say I have a non-traditional background compared to most people that are working in the company, right? And so we have our ERGs, right? The Eaton, the employee resource groups, and we have IERGs, inclusion. And we have 8 of them, right? Everything from disabilities, Latinos, people from APAC region, Blacks and African Americans, so that's there right away for you, right? So that you have a support system of people, not only that look like you, but also allies that don't look like you, right? So that to me is super important. And, Eaton really sees that value of inclusion, right? And really makes you feel unique as you come into the company. And I experienced that, almost 5 years ago, because we know that diversity is not only the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. And it does affect things like our bottom line and allows our companies to thrive and be successful. So, when I think about that experience, it's almost like, well, do you want to be treated the same as everyone else, or should we welcome people like everyone else, right? So we want that treatment to where you feel valued, right? We're fighting to be welcomed like everybody else. I personally had that experience. And really the fight for equality is that we would welcome one person the way that we would welcome every person.
Thank you all for sharing such great experiences. It's so great to know that all of these companies are going to such great lengths to make everyone feel welcome and included from the very beginning.
Thank you guys so much. So my next question is actually going to be for David and Jess. I'm sorry, actually David and Sarah. So how does diversity, equity, and inclusion demonstrated in the workplace with examples of successfulness outcomes for diverse employees? So how is that demonstrated?
So I'll defer. David, you want to?
Sarah, if you had a response, feel free, and then I'm happy to respond. Or
okay, sounds good. Definitely. So how's it demonstrated? I think it's demonstrated in a couple of different ways. I think by everything that everyone has said so far here, we're doing a lot of those things at DLC. A couple of things. So some of the successes. One of the things that we were challenged with recently was the social unrest. As related to the murder of George Floyd. And how do we demonstrate our commitment to the community in terms of equity and parity, right? How do we talk about that? But better yet, how do we engage our internal employees in the conversation respectfully? So you talked about what does success look like? Well, we created a platform called Driving Social and Cultural Change. And our leadership, and again, when we talk about DE&I, when you have sponsorship from the very top of the organization, then that starts the conversation. So we created this platform, and the very first thing that we did was extremely successful. Is we had our leadership, our executives, the very top of the house, talk about this, talk about their commitment, talk about what we're going to be doing as an organization to further, right, support the community while we're going through this trauma. And so, that speaks in volumes. And so we literally, so for an electric utility to go out and say, hey, we're here, we're not the best at this, but we're going to get better, but we're committed. And we're talking to our employees, and we're giving them the tools and the tips to have these critical kinds of conversations. And we're surfacing things. And we talk a lot about being heard, right? So we took it the next step. We didn't just talk about it, we made it happen. So what else does success look like? We started having listening tours, and we started engaging our executives in the listening tours so that people were being heard. And once they were being heard, we were translating that into action. And then we have next steps. What else does success look like? Well, when we started this DEI journey, so I've only been with Duquesne Light for 18 months, but in 12 months, we set up a DEI strategy. We had a strong level of communication. We engaged the organization. We set up 3 BERGs, Business Employee Resource Groups, one being Black African American, right, to focus and to make sure that we're moving things forward. We have a group on women, because in a utility, this is kind of where we need to do better. And then we just recently set up our veterans organization, but we didn't stop there. So we continue to grow that, and we can continue to grow like our speakers panel. And then we used our own internal employees to tell their stories and why their stories were important, because quite frankly, the way you make change and the way change happens is through everybody in your organization. And when they become advocates, when they become champions, when their voices are actually heard, listened to, and acted upon, that's when change happens. So for me, in 18 months, an organization who was, again, I think I heard it said earlier, who was striving towards this, has actually taken that action to make it happen, lead by example, role model behaviors. And not only did we have like this organic top-down kind of approach, but we had this real robust bottom-up reception that said, yeah, you know what? We do have a little ways to go, but we're glad that you're making this actionable. We're glad that we're being heard, and we're glad that there are next steps in place for us to make this a sustainable effort. In other words, we're committed and we're going to continue. So thank you for that. Thanks, David.
Sarah, it was great hearing and learning from you, and congratulations on all of the success that Duquesne Light under your leadership has already had in such a short period of time, 18 months. I would share from my perspective, to your point, an integrated strategy that's really built in and not bolted on. And I think that's the starting point for this conversation. So very often I've found in my own experience, in my own career, that, here's the business, and then there's this diversity thing over here. And what, Sarah and myself and others are talking about is how it needs to be integrated into the business. So from my perspective, sharing on behalf of UPMC, at the highest, broadest level, who we serve, of course, are our patients and their families, our health plan members, the community as a whole, and our employees. And for us, we have over 90,000 employees, and they're cherished members of our team. And so from a diversity and inclusion perspective, we want to integrate into all aspects of our focus to ensure diversity and inclusion is really built in. And so how we go about doing that is really thinking about what are the most meaningful metrics. So a standard business practice that many of us could discuss, no matter what function or work that you do, is what gets measured gets done. And so how we identify, because there's no shortage of data, right? So how do we identify the most meaningful data points and say, here's where we're at and here's where we need to go? We do not strive to be status quo at anything that we do at UPMC, and that's also true within diversity. So even if we've made it to a point that we're very excited about, we have more work to do. In fact, as an organization, we have increased our executives, specifically executives of color, by 70% in 4 years. We are so proud of that effort, but I will share with you, we are in the midst of setting our next effort to get even better. How we go about that is going back to that key word that Sarah talked about when she talked about commitment. And I would add that we have the commitment, but you also then have the strategy. So when we start to identify those most meaningful metrics, how do we really improve upon them? Sometimes when we talk about diversity, which, in a brief way to describe that, we could say all the different dimensions that make us who we are. The other important point to that conversation is inclusion, which is making sure all of those pieces, your full self, are appreciated and are valued. And so to me, to help kind of add to some of the efforts that Sarah mentioned, I would talk about work that we're doing to create an inclusive culture for our employees. And thinking about from a learning perspective, how do we help build the cultural competency or the skill set of our workforce to take care of our patients of today and our patients of tomorrow, but also to be a better team? And that's been a very significant effort that we've really invested in. So very often, and I had this experience many of times when I was growing up, there's things that they say, well, you never talk about this in the workplace. You never talk about religion, or you never talk about politics. And one of the things that we do at UPMC, and I as a diversity practitioner, I say, we are going to talk about it. We're going to do so in a way that is reflective of our organizational culture and our values, but we need to talk about these things so we become better teammates and a better organization. And so how we demonstrate diversity and inclusion in our workplace, sometimes it's not even by saying diversity or saying inclusion. It's actually by the behaviors that we demonstrate. And we really invest in learning opportunities for our employees at all levels of the organization to fine-tune that skill set. All of us have preferences and all of us have biases. From my experience, I think one of the biggest derailers to diversity isn't always necessarily bias, but it can sometimes be favoritism. And people liking people like themselves. And how you work through that, I think, is a really important part to our learning. Thank you for the question.
Thank you both so much for answering that question. I do enjoy hearing from you both and how you answered that. So I think our next question Devin's going to ask.
Yes, my next question is for Katha, and it's for Jess. What are the ways that new diverse employees are supported in their efforts to make the workplace culture more diverse, equitable, and inclusive? Are there avenues and strategies that you can speak about?
All right, well, I'll dive right in. Great question. You know, at Eaton, we place the responsibility for making it more diverse on our executive leadership. And we're one of the few Fortune 500 companies that has almost 50% at our board of directors and executive leadership level that is diverse. So we also look at it too, that it doesn't really necessarily fall on diverse employees to make the workplace more diverse, right? You know, a lot of times we look at that falls into the HR bucket, right? So again, the burden, not on our diverse employees, but you know, I'm going to give you an example of last week. So last week we had, and I talked about our IERGs, those inclusion resource groups that we have, and we have 8 of them. And out of the 8, we had not 1, 2, but 3 events last week around Pride, SOAR, which is for our Asian partners, and then Enable for disabilities. Friday was National Autism or Global Autism Day, and we had a great panel and event and discussion on autism. Earlier in the week, we had a Stop Asian Hate live event with our senior executive leaders around the Asian American Pacific Islander events that happened in Atlanta. So we had an open discussion about that. And then on Tuesday, the 31st of March, was the Transgender Day of Visibility. And we actually had a live pop-up event with the Cleveland Film Festival, and was able to showcase a film about a transgender person and their journey. And so again, you know, education is big for us at Eaton, right? And we have developed programming to increase, you know, cultural competencies. Like I said, last week was an example with in a week with these 3 different events, right? Because we do need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And having some of these discussions and being open and honest about what's going on, especially with current events. And we want to knock down barriers, right? We want to, we're influencing right now on personal pronouns, talking about microaggressions, bias, these are things that are happening and that are real. And so we feel like it's really important to do that. One of the things that's been really fun for me in the first 2 months of this role is we've just launched a Conversation That Matters series. And within that series, we have some external conversations, we have some internal conversations, as well as these pop-ups for some fun events. And, we want to build our organizational capability, right? We want to build awareness. And, this is a priority for us at Eaton. And one of the key focus areas is learning and development, especially right now for women and U.S. minorities. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the statistics about women who have, lost their jobs or have had to tend to their families and make a decision between family and job during the pandemic, right? So we globally have ally circles, we've got learning circles and ways to even upscale our HR personnel as well, so that we can make sure everybody is really set up for success as we look at being more diverse and having these equitable and inclusive practices and strategies, so that people can not only successfully complete their work, but feel like they're working for a company where they're valued and their voice is heard.
Great. I guess I can take it from there. This is a question that really excites me for numerous reasons. The first is I'm new to the Pittsburgh market, as I mentioned. So change and new and exciting ideas is what I'm all about. I think that there's no idea that's too crazy. I'm all about it. But what we've done specifically here, and I'll talk about the local level because I think that our company does a lot on the corporate level, but we're going to kind of stick to this, is we also have incorporated some of the employee resource groups that you just mentioned. And to Sarah's point, with all of the social unrest, we needed to make sure that we had a safe place that our employees knew that they could go to discuss this. And I think David mentioned that it also starts at the executive level. So making sure that you have that buy-in from the top just makes it that more important, and it makes our employees feel comfortable sharing their opinions, thoughts, and concerns. So we didn't avoid the topic. We decided to tackle that head on. Our first employee resource group was for some of our employees of color, but all of our executives attended as allies. They were open to hearing how everyone felt. They were open to different ideas and what can we do in this market to make a difference and to be better. So that is something that we're extremely aware of, and that has grown. So now we just had a meeting last week, as a matter of fact, with our LGBTQ plus employees to talk about, hey, what are some things that we could do to better support your community? And we're all ears, and our employees are feeling heard, which is something that is extremely important to all of us. When we think about change and implementing change, we can't just sit in a boardroom and come up with strategies. We need to listen to our employees and what do they want, and do they feel that they are given the right opportunities? Somebody once told me that with regards to diversity and inclusion, diversity is being invited to the dance, to the party, but inclusion is being invited to dance. And I kind of took that and I said, okay, so what can we do about that? And we provide a lot of opportunities for all of our employees to progress their career, which we're inviting them to the party, but are we inviting them to dance? So what we've done with that is we've actually held leadership forums for our female and minority employees, specifically for their professional development. We hire a lot of entry-level position where they may not have been exposed to how do I carry my professional brand? How do I interview for that next job? How do I network? We constantly talk about networking, but do we know how to do it? So we've decided to take on different initiatives where we're, for lack of a better term, inviting our employees to dance. So I think the combination of providing different outlets for them to voice their concerns, their opinions, places where they can openly discuss new ideas that they may have and see that we're actually listening and taking initiative with those ideas. We've gotten great community partners to volunteer based on some of our employees' feedback, and then providing that professional development to make sure that we're doing everything that we potentially can to continue that professional development. And I'm really proud to say that within that time frame, we are 40% female at our highest levels here in the Pittsburgh market. So I'd like to say, or like to think that some of these initiatives are working. So it is something that we are really proud of recently.
Thank you both for sharing. I really appreciate hearing that information. And I'm going to have to use that phrase, Jess. I love that. I love it.
All right, so our next question is going to be for Abubakar and Chris. So how do graduates applying for jobs assess ahead of time if meaningful DEI practices are in place?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. No, this is what I'll say. That's probably that's a great question, but probably a very straightforward one. The good news is, I remember when I became an intern with Target way back when, internet was not as prevalent as it is today, right? So there's plenty of information, that these graduates can now find out online in terms of, the companies that they're interviewing with and what they're about, what they stand for, what their cultures are, and so on and so forth. So you can find plenty of that information online. But another piece too that I think when I talk to interns when they come to Target, or when we do some of the sessions, is every time you're being interviewed by a company is a great opportunity for you to then interview that company as well, right? So don't just look at it as, well, let me show up and be ready to be interviewed. But that's a great opportunity for you to seize the moment and ask them tough questions and ask them, what their beliefs are, what they stand for, what they represent, and so on. So I think, that's a great conversation I've had with plenty of folks coming on board. So, and then the final piece I'll add there is, it's a little bit tricky now because we do a lot more virtual stuff. But back when you could actually go in for these interviews, I just simply call it eyeball test. Look around, see what you see, right? It's very straightforward on that can give you a greater sense in terms of what these companies are and what they value, what they represent. Now, if you show up, for an interview and you don't see what you want to see from a diversity representation standpoint, that's a telltale sign, right? So I think those are some of the things that I'll kind of highlight in terms of as it pertains to that question.
Yeah, continuing on, this one of my favorite questions actually, but it's, as Abubakar said, it's really just the eyeball test. There's so much information out there. Companies have their LinkedIns, their Instagrams, their Twitters, so their websites, you see what the diversity of their leadership team is at the highest level. You can see their corporate social responsibility reports to see what is the data that tells me that this is a opportune place to work. And in some of the things that I look at are, what are the companies saying? We have, it seems like every week, every day, new tragedy, new opportunity for growth, just things going on in the country. So what is this company saying? Does this leadership team align to what my views are as a individual? And continue to ask questions. I know, for you all at Pitt, I feel like we're here at Pitt every week. So you might get a chance to talk to Chris on Monday, Madison on Tuesday, Jennifer, this is people on my team, Jennifer on Friday. So what are all those individuals saying in that conversation? And typically when I talk to students, they're like, you all said the same thing. Like, is that something in the Kool-Aid? I'm like, yeah, it's just, we stand behind what we say and what we're going to the market with. So again, research, conversations, and just knowing, I guess, taking some time to explore what type of industry you want to work. Is that industry diverse? Who are the players? It's just a lot of, like I said, self-realization and digging into a company to see if that matches where your interests lie. So for me, that was big in making a decision as to, where I want to intern or I want to take a full-time opportunity. And I think it's worked out well from doing that research. But again, banking itself isn't traditionally or historically diverse, and you'll probably see different companies and, especially us, trying to change that narrative of what a financial institution or financial firm is, and what we do for the community and things of that nature. So again, just research is key, and self-realization is key as well.
Thank you both so much for answering that question. And yes to the eyeball test, and yes to researching and everything. I had a couple people in the chat say yes to the eyeball test. So I'm so glad you guys brought that up. And yes, doing the research and definitely, you know, really figuring out what that company is doing. So I think Devin has another question for some of you.
Yes, my next question is for David, Sarah, and Abukar. How can a graduate present their authentic self professionally in an interview in the workplace?
I'll go. Thank you. My tech's actually working, so yay! That's a really good thing. So one of the things I think about when it comes to this, so I spent a lot of time recruiting interns. I spent a lot of time on college campuses because in my former role, I used to own all of talent acquisition for a large organization. And so I kind of got this question a lot. And so I developed this little thing. It's called CAN, Connect, Activate, and Network, right? So I think if you use that it'll work for you. So how can you connect? It's just being who you are, being comfortable with who you are, and kind of showing off who you are professionally, of course. But then that allows you, because you're so comfortable, to connect with the person who's going to be doing the interview. Activate. So activate all those wonderful things about you, that skill set, that background, the culture, the ROI that you feel you can bring to the organization, right? So activate all of those wonderful things. And the network. I like the eyeballing everything, because that's kind of the way I look at it. But when you're doing that, it's another opportunity to network. Maybe there's something out there more for you. So it is an opportunity to kind of have that conversation, to look around, to see if this is interesting to you, because this is about you. It's about the organization, it's about the opportunity, but it is about you. So I would use what I call CAN. You can do it. So you can connect, you can activate, and you can network. And, I've seen those things really work, because first of all, it kind of brings you down from that. I think David said earlier that it's like one of the most stressful things, right? You're going through, right? And so you go in and you're kind of like, and I've been there, right? You're a little shaky. Oh my gosh, this is going to take over the rest of my life. It really isn't. But at the time I thought so too, right? But if you can connect, activate, and network, and you're thinking about those things, it puts your mind a little bit at ease. It rests all that anxiety, and you can be the best possible you. And when you leave there, regardless of the outcome, you knew that you brought your whole self in there, that you looked around, you determined this is the best place for you, and you were able to actively communicate your ability to make change and make a difference and add value to the organization. So I find that works. If anybody else thinks, I don't know about that, let me know. But I'm more than willing to listen, because I've learned a lot here sitting on the panel. So I appreciate, again, being here, and I'm excited about it. But you can do it. It's kind of corny, but I like it. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Love it. We love it. We love it, Sarah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And just to kind of piggyback on Sarah's point there with you can get so much done. That resonated with me, Sarah, as you're saying that. And I got to tell you guys, it's easier said than done, right? And that question is not just for graduates, but that's a legitimate question for even some of the panels, including myself on this call today, right? How can we be our authentic self at work, right? Because I remember when I started with the company 17 years ago, you've got to do things certain way. You've got to speak certain way. You've got to present certain way. You've got to, so there was a lot of almost forcing you into a box. Now, thank goodness, over the years, I've gotten more and more comfortable, but it's easier said than done. Like, you don't just show up day one and go, oh, I'm just going to be my authentic self, right? So I think the one thing, though, I will say is, as I listen to Sarah speak, I think as I grew with the company, as I grew with Target over the years, I became more and more comfortable. And as a result, I'm a lot more productive. and my results are a lot better, and the people around me are a lot better, and so on and so forth, right? So I think it's a chain reaction. The sooner you realize, the faster you realize, if I'm not my authentic self, I'm cheating not only yourself, but the folks around you, I think the better off you're going to be in the long term. So it's a practice, but this is what I was saying. I've said this to some of the folks that I've interviewed with, is we, as a leadership team, have to help them become or be their authentic self in this interview setting. We have to help them. We have to meet them halfway, right? And then secondly, I think we have to ensure that they understand, if you're not your authentic self at the interview setting, then maybe this company is just not for you. Because if you can't truly be authentic self, then you might want to go find something else to go do where you can truly be authentic self, or else you're going to spend 10, 15, 20 years with a company where you're cheating yourself. And as a result, you're cheating the folks around.
I think this conversation has been so helpful, and it's crucial to all of our success. Some comments that maybe I would contribute to the discussion is really starting from the point of defining what's important to you and who are you. And so many of times when we think about diversity and we think about different pieces that make us who we are, sometimes we don't always think about how they all connect and overlap. And that's the concept of intersectionality. And so I think it's really helpful for all of us, no matter what stage we are in our career, as we think about opportunities, if it's to join new organizations or it's to advance within your current role and in your current company, is to have an understanding of who you are, what's important to you. And as you think about that and you define that, we recognize that some aspects of diversity cannot be seen. We recognize there's many components that make us who we are. So that's a deep question for us all to think about. As we think about that, we then need to recognize and understand that we all have strengths and we all have opportunities to improve. So very often in the business world, all of us can be guilty of, and I know I include myself in this, of thinking about, okay, here's my areas of improvement and I need to focus here. But many of times what I'd say is we want to focus on our strengths. And one of our strengths that all of us share is who you are and how you identify. That is a strength. And so I think that mind shift is extremely important. Be you, don't try to be someone else. And that for me has been, I think, very helpful for my own career growth within my own organization. I think another important component that I've learned from experience, from some trial and error, I'll say, is really helping to understand what the display of that looks like. So I think about in my own personal life, for example, you know, I have friends in many different circles, and the way I interact, I hope in all of those circles are my true self, but I recognize there's different norms and different cultural aspects and traditions in each of those different areas. That is also very true within the workplace. So I think as we think about who we are, defining ourselves, recognizing that that is a strength that will add value to the organization and help you stand apart, so to speak, from a skill set perspective. I also think we want to recognize where we are in that organization, where we're looking at going, and how we can do so in a way that aligns with the organizational culture. That doesn't always mean the organizational culture is good, though. So that goes back to the points that were always previously raised about being mindful, again, of what's in your environment, and are you able to be a catalyst for change of that culture? And if you're not able to be within that organization, then that gives you all the information you need to know about how they value diversity and inclusion. And I would then suggest to you to explore additional opportunities.
Thank you so much, everyone, for answering that. And yes, being authentic and bringing yourself is definitely very key to everything. So my last question is for the remaining panelists that did not answer that question. So for Eaton, and enterprise and PNC, are all levels of staff trained on an ongoing basis in DUI or DEI?
Yeah, I'd say for the most part, it's more on the, well, if we're talking overall, diversity and inclusion is one of PNC's core values. So we hope to be displaying that in everything that we do, every single day. I'd say as far as training, there's optional training for every individual, every employee to learn more about the behaviors that go into being a great ally, DE&I professional, et cetera. But as when we get to the requirement aspect, all of our managers are required to take some sort of unconscious bias training, DE&I training, to make sure that, again, that is permeating from a not only top-down level, but a bottom-up, to ensure that we're making these equitable decisions, these inclusive decisions when it comes to not only hiring, but retention, promotions, and just overall improving quality of life of all employees, I think for me, that's the most important thing. So long-winded way of answering your question to say yes.
I'm happy to go next. That is absolutely a requirement for all of our employees at all different levels. So we vary from level 1 employees all the way up to level 4 employees, and those are our officers. So we call it our open mind, open doors training. And there are different modules based on the level of employee. Level 2's typically, that's a managerial type role. So that becomes on managing a diverse workforce, and then it continues to expand throughout that. So when it comes to formalized training, we absolutely do. Once you get to level 3, we actually fly everyone. Our corporate headquarters is in St. Louis. It's obviously pre-COVID, it's virtual now. But it was a full two-day training for all of our level 3 employees, and very candid conversations, a lot of enlightening conversations, just making sure that, again, we are taking the top-down approach. It is something that is extremely important to our culture as well. And then we just revamped it. So we want to make sure that it remains recent and relevant. So we just redid all of the modules to make sure that we're addressing a lot of the social unrest and a lot of the topics that have come out recently. So as far as formalized training, that's what we do. But then we have informal training as well. We have our general managers all have our diverse mentorship programs that we call it, where we pick diverse employees who are showing lots of potential to make it into executive level positions, to give them the additional training and development to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help support them reach their career goals. So it's something that I love. I get to be a part of it. We get to switch out training and facilitators every 2 years to make sure that we're keeping it fresh. So that's something that is constantly top of mind and discussed at our organization.
Great. Well, I will just wrap us up. We've had over 6,000 of our manager of people take our Valuing Inclusion Diversity course, and we're in the process right now of developing some micro-learning. But we also are really focused to have other ways to educate people without going to a class, and especially to our VID course was an 8-hour in person. Now it's we're transitioning to a 4-hour, virtual course. So, learning and development happens in different ways, and these educational sessions that we're always trying to have. And like I mentioned earlier about our conversations that matter, right? External conversations that matter, internal, and then some of these pop up around events. So we're finding creative ways to make sure that everybody is well aware of the different topics, and also just being trained on those basic DE&I practices.
In our final moments here, I do want to address one question that we have in the chat, and anyone, please feel free to jump in on this question. What resources are available when new employees do end up in an environment where they are not comfortable being their authentic selves?
Yeah, so here at Duquesne Light, we are reconfirming the resources for our employee population. And so there are many ways when someone is feeling uncomfortable or there was something that was said that was, you know, not on par with professionalism, or, you know, that something happened. And so we have a couple of different avenues. Typically you can go through human resources, right, to kind of do that. But we've opened ourselves up as a DE&I unit and department to kind of help people to build some level of trust and help people be able to speak out and know that we are there to support them. And so we give people different channels to communicate. And again, earlier, one of the things I talked about was we created BERGs, Business Employee Resource Groups. That's another channel. We created, again, in the past 18 months, a DE&I council, which is cross-functional across the organization. So we create little microcosms of opportunity for people to have a conversation. But what's most important is not just having the conversation, but that there is action after the conversation. And so we are very focused on taking the appropriate action to do the most appropriate thing. And then after that, it's the follow-up, and then anything else that we can do as an organization. So that doesn't mean you have to call somebody. We have a web page, we have an email address, we have our work cell phones out there. So we encourage people to text us, because when we talk about diversity, we always talk about a couple of different dimensions, but communication is one of those. Some people like to talk, some people like the text, and some people like the email, right? And so we give everyone an opportunity to communicate that way. But we also do one other thing. We encourage people to communicate, because you may be feeling like that and you just may feel like you have no way out, but we consistently reinforce the channels that are available to communicate concerns. So thank you.
Thank you so much for addressing that for us, Sarah.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think it's time to wrap up our panel. And thank you guys so much for being here today. We know it's, that you have a schedule and sometimes it can get a little hectic, but we do appreciate your time and everything that you're doing for DEI in the workplace. We appreciate it so much. And I hope the students, staff, faculty, whoever were able to join us today got a lot of information and are able to move forward with everything that they heard from today. So I just wanted to say thank you again so much. And I hope that everybody has a great day. It's beautiful. Enjoy the weather and move forward and keep moving forward with everything that you guys are doing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Take care.